Now let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is looking at hook-init. So go ahead and open up the trails.module02 hook-init step. And let's go ahead and copy this code and paste it into our trails.module file. I'm going to go ahead and save it. The only difference in this version is that the hook-init function is populated with some code. So the goal of our module is to track history, right? So on every page load, we need to grab the path that the user is on as well as the title of the path. And since we're showing how long ago the user visited that page, we also want to collect a timestamp too. So we need a place to put all that data. As we progress through some of these videos, we're going to be talking about the database layer, and that would be probably the most appropriate place to store data. But sometimes it can be useful to use the variable get and set API functions in Drupal to store some data that's going to be limited in its size. So that's what we're going to do with this as an example of how to use it. And this variable get, variable set can be very powerful, and it's also super easy to use. So if you have a limited data set, this can be the technique that would prove the most useful. So let's go ahead and work through this line by line, this function line by line. So what we're doing is grabbing the trail history, and then we're adding a new item to it, and then we're saving it. So we need to grab that variable first. Variable get is the way that we do that, and we pass it the name of the variable, which contains the name of our module and underscore, and then some unique identifier. But we always want to prefix it with the name of our module in order to avoid namespacing issues so that other modules don't use the same variable as we do. And then we're passing it a default value. So if this variable doesn't exist, we want to grab whatever's in this second parameter. So the first time that this runs, it will grab an empty array. Our next step is to add the current page to the trail. So we're taking the trail as an array. So when we grab this variable, regardless of its structure, it can be an array, it can be an object, or it can be a simple integer or string. It will translate back into the variable that we saved it as. So in this case, it's going to be an array. And we're going to save some data to a new element in that array as an associative array. So we're going to set a title to the Drupal get title, which is a function that will grab the title that's going to display in the title tag on the page. And because titles can include occasionally HTML, we want to go ahead and strip the tags out of there so it's just plain text. So we're assigning that to the title. Our next is to assign the path, and we're using a variable called getQ. Now get, as you may be aware, is a global array that includes any items that get passed through the query string of a URL. Let's take a look at the path on our Drupal site real quick. So here we're at admin/report/status. Now the reason why we're seeing the URL in this structure is because we have clean URLs, the clean URLs variable turned on. If that was turned off, what we'd see is a query string with q equals and then the path. So if we went to this page, we would see the same thing. The implication here is that we can get the path of the current page by looking at the getQ variable. So that's exactly what we're doing in our code here. We're grabbing the getQ variable and assigning that to the path. The next bit of information we need is the timestamp, or the time that the page was loaded. Now we could use the PHP function time, but there's a constant that's defined in Drupal called request time that grabs that time and stores it so we don't have to go through that same process again, which improves performance just a little bit. And our final step is saving that variable. So we're saving that variable again, the trail array, to trails history. And then the next time the page loads, it will grab the trail array from this variable and then add a new item and save it again. So it's this loop every time we go to a page.